At least 146 people are killed in a crush during Halloween celebrations in the South Korean capital, Seoul. Partygoers had earlier reported feeling unsafe as tens of thousands of people poured into one area.
There's so many people to the point we were being crushed on the pavement, to the point where we had to spill onto the road where there were, cars.
Scores of people have been injured, many of them seriously. We'll have the latest from Seoul. Also tonight, Russia says it's suspending participation in the deal to allow grain exports from Ukrainian ports. The UN says it wants an explanation from Moscow. Octopus Energy is to buy Bulb, which collapsed last year, taking on its 1.5 million customers. And England put 17 tries past Greece in the Rugby League World Cup as they march on to the knockout stage in style. Hello, good evening. At least 146 people have died and 150 others have been injured in a crush in the South Korean capital, Seoul. The disaster occurred as huge crowds gathered in a popular nightlife area to celebrate Halloween. Video footage shows medical teams giving emergency treatment to dozens of people who appeared to be unconscious, lying in the middle of crowded streets. Earlier in the night, some partygoers had said on social media that there were so many people in the area that it didn't feel safe. Our correspondent Jean McKenzie reports from Seoul.
Young people out to party, having fun, until things suddenly change. By the end of the night, bodies lined the street, some in costume. Others were carried into ambulances, lifeless and barefoot. The chilling sign of people who've tried to run, but not been able to. The crush started in a small alleyway. It was so packed, people were stuck, elbow to elbow. They had barely an inch to move when the crowd surged forward.
2시 40분 현재
The incident happened as large numbers of people fell down during the Halloween festival, which caused serious injuries.
This area of Seoul is one of the most popular places for a night out, for locals and tourists. It's the place to celebrate Halloween, and it's estimated 100,000 had come tonight.
There's so many people to the point we were being crushed on the pavement, to the point where we had to spill onto the road where there were cars. No one really understood what was going on, but there were already several police cars at the scene in front of Itaewon Station and police standing on top of their police cars, desperately trying to tell people to leave the area as soon as possible.
Hundreds of ambulances and fire engines line the streets. Desperate people, alongside emergency workers, try to perform CPR. And there will likely be more as the injured are treated in hospital. Something has gone horrifically wrong here in Seoul tonight. Working out what is an important next step. But tonight, this city is numb, still trying to track down its lost.
That report from our correspondent Jean McKenzie. Russia says it is suspending its participation in an internationally brokered deal to allow grain exports from Ukraine. The announcement was in response to what the Russian army called a massive Ukrainian drone attack on Russian ships in occupied Crimea. But Ukraine has called that a false pretext for blocking the grain corridors. Tonight, President Biden described Russia's decision as outrageous. Let's talk to our correspondent James Waterhouse, who's in the city of Dnipro, and explain more, James, about the significance of Russia backing out of this agreement.
Well, they've said they've suspended their participation. I think whether you can take any hope from that, we don't yet know, but it is a diplomatic blow. Why? Well, the grain deal was a big one because of what was tied up in it. It's the only diplomatic breakthrough we've had in this war so far, aside from prisoner of war exchanges. It helps Ukraine's damaged economy by allowing it to export more than 9 million tonnes of agricultural produce since July when it was signed. But it's also led to tens of millions of people around the world, many from poorer countries. It's helped them eat and not starve, because many are so reliant on Ukraine because it's one of the world's biggest producers of grain. So there you have the diplomatic blow. Why has Russia done this? Well, it blames Ukraine on a drone strike on its Black Sea fleet next to the city of Sevastopol in occupied Crimea. Crimea is a place that Russia likes to portray as a fortress. It annexed it 8 years ago without firing a shot, and it wants to say, look, this is Russia. So what happens now? Well, we're in this pattern. You might be able to hear sirens behind me. When Crimea is targeted, it hits Ukrainian infrastructure, and the worry is that could now be a pattern for some time. Ukraine hasn't commented, but it's taken a lot of satisfaction, you can be sure of that.
James, many thanks. James Waterhouse. Here, Labour is calling for an investigation into reports that Liz Truss's phone was hacked while she was Foreign Secretary. The Mail on Sunday says the messages stolen included private conversations about the war in Ukraine. The security breach is thought to have been discovered during the Conservative leadership campaign this summer. Our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake, is with me. Explain more about what we know, Jonathan.
Jane, as you say, discussions with other foreign ministers around the world about the war in Ukraine, as well as messages between Liz Truss and her friend, the former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, are among the information which is believed to have been hacked from Liz Truss's phone at some point over the summer during the Conservative Party leadership campaign. As you say, she was Foreign Secretary at the time. This is what the Mail on Sunday is reporting tonight, according to anonymous sources. Labour, other opposition parties have seized on this. The Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said that these are immensely important national security issues raised by an attack like this, which will have to be taken extremely seriously. And the Lib Dem Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Leyland Moran, saying we need an urgent investigation. In government, there's likely to have been a consideration about how this would reflect on the UK's own approach to cybersecurity if it were to be been made public, hence the details were kept under wraps. Tonight, the government only saying that they don't comment on individual security arrangements but have robust systems in place to protect against cyber threats.
Jonathan Blake, thank you. The household energy supplier Octopus is to buy its competitor Bulb, the largest energy company to collapse last year amid soaring wholesale gas and electricity prices. Since then, the government has spent billions of pounds keeping Bulb afloat. Now, Octopus has agreed a deal to take on the company's 1.5 million customers. Our business reporter Ramzan Kamali has the details.
The energy market was in disarray this time last year. Dozens of firms went bust as energy prices soared. The regulator, Ofgem, increased what was then known as the energy price cap. The biggest victim was Bulb, put in a special administration, kept going by a huge government bailout. Today, Octopus are confident the takeover of Bulb's customers would be a smooth one.
Octopus has got a great track record of bringing large numbers of customers across. So, for example, when Avro failed, it was the largest company to date. We were able to look after those customers and staff pretty seamlessly. And I think with Bulb, the experience we've got means that we're probably the natural choice.
In total, 1.5 million Bulb customers will move across to Octopus. Last November, the government had to bail out the firm with a £1.7 billion loan. But early this year, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility predicted the total bailout package would be £2.2 billion. This deal could save taxpayers millions.
I think it'd be good, for Octopus to take over Bulb and relieve the taxpayer of the burden of running it for the moment. Also will make Bulb customers obviously give them more comfort that someone is actually running their business and looking after them in the best way possible.
Additionally, Octopus has agreed to share profits, if any are made from its new Bulb customers, with the government for up to 4 years. Octopus will become one of the country's biggest suppliers, and the company were keen to reassure customers.
No one's going to see prices going up as a result of this agreement. People should just sit tight For now, the service will carry on exactly as it does, provided by the same people.
Since the war in Ukraine, energy bills are much higher, despite the government's energy price guarantee. That's due to end next April. So even though there's been some certainty provided with this deal, for consumers what they pay in the future remains unclear. Ramzan Karmali, BBC News.
Now, we are going to get the very latest on our main story tonight. That's news that at least 146 people have died in Seoul. Let's go straight to the scene because our correspondent Jean McKenzie is now there. Are the authorities, Jean, any closer to understanding how this crush started?
That we still don't know exactly what caused the crush, but we are starting to get a much bigger picture of how things unfolded. If you've seen the alleyway, you can see that it's incredibly narrow. We know that there were thousands of people packed into a very small space, and actually it's very steep slope as well, so it goes right up. And we think some reports, what we're hearing, that people at the top of the slope slipped, and then that pushed people down the slope. But what we know is that the area was totally overcrowded. This is such a popular area of people, and Halloween is one of the busiest nights of the year. I was having conversations with people just this week who were saying that they wanted to try and avoid Itaewon tonight because they knew it was going to be so busy. So these crowds were expected. There will, of course, be a post-mortem into all this, but I think at the moment the focus still here is trying to identify those who died because the death toll is just so high and it keeps jumping up. You know, people asking, with so many injured as well, hundreds of people injured, how high is that death toll going to get?
Jean McKenzie at the scene there in Seoul. Thank you. Apologies for the less than ideal sound quality there. Jean, just at the scene of that very distressing story tonight in Seoul. 146 people confirmed as having died. Now we will turn to all the day's latest sports news, and that comes tonight from Ollie Foster. Evening, Ollie.
Many thanks to you, Jane. Good evening to you. England have maintained their 100% record at the Rugby League World Cup. They ran in 17 tries against Greece, winning 94 points to 4 in Sheffield. Adam Wilde was at Bramall Lane.
As this World Cup reaches the Steel City, a moment for England to show their mettle. They've never played Greece before. England had never played here before. For all, a breath of fresh air. Greece just being at this World Cup is a triumph. The sport was illegal there until just a few months ago. Still, for England, not a day to dwell on sentiment. Matty Lees giving them the lead. Whilst the result was rarely in doubt, Greece would have their moment. Seteni Tokamo, and yet another moment of history. But England too have heroes making a name for themselves, few more so than Dom Young. This completed a first half hat-trick, and neither he nor England was finished there. He'd score a fourth before the break. After it, England really cut loose. A further 9 tries, including a second for Ryan Hall, and a special debut moment for Kai Pearce-Paul. A record score on an historic afternoon at Bramall Lane.
Job done, awkward fixture. I mean, fair play to Greece. They turned up and they didn't give in until the end. And I thought we did a lot of good things today, but a different challenge next week, not worried about that.
And so a win that was as convincing as many might have expected. But despite all the excitement, England won't be getting carried away. The knockouts are next, and the hard work is only just beginning. Adam Wilde, BBC News in Sheffield.
It's the quarter-finals next for England, but it's all over for Scotland. They needed a huge win over Fiji and Newcastle to have any chance of making it out of their group, but they lost 30 points to 14. Wales have been knocked out of the Women's Rugby World Cup. They lost 55-3 against the host New Zealand. The defending champions ran in 9 tries. They've got France in the semi-finals. England will play their quarter-final against Australia in the next few hours. We've had 8 matches in the Premier League. All the goals are coming up on Match of the Day after the news, but stay right there if you'd like the results. Manchester City are top of the table tonight thanks to a stunning free kick from Kevin De Bruyne at Leicester City. That was the only goal of the game. They lead by a point from Arsenal, who play tomorrow. Tottenham came from 2 down to win 3-2 at Bournemouth. Brentford drew with Wolves. Brighton beat Chelsea 4-1. Also wins for Crystal Palace and Newcastle. No goals between Fulham and Everton. Rangers are a point behind leaders Celtic in the Scottish Premiership. They came from a goal down to beat Aberdeen 4-1 at Ibrox. Also wins for Motherwell, Hibs and St Johnstone. Celtic play tomorrow. The British triathlete Georgia Taylor-Brown has retained her Super League Championship title. The Olympic gold and silver medalist had to beat the USA's Taylor Spivey in the season-ending race in Saudi Arabia, and she crossed the line first. Britain's Johnny Brownlee finished third overall in the men's series. Max Verstappen is on pole for tomorrow's Mexico City Grand Prix, but that's all the sport for now.
Ollie Foster, thank you very much. Quick reminder before I go, Laura Koonsberg is on BBC One, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Her guests include Michael Gove and Yvette Cooper. And a crucial reminder, the clocks go back an hour overnight. That's all from the team for this evening. A very good night.